My name is Ralph Maima. I'm the director of the MBA program here at Marlboro College Graduate School. And in a moment or two, I will be introducing this evening's visitors via Bill Bowie, one of my colleagues, one of the faculty in the MBA program. But I wanted to preface his introduction of this evening's panelists with just a couple of remarks to orient what we're doing. In the current issue of the Investment Professional, which is the very small text here, the Journal of the New York Society of Security Analysts, there's actually an article about the sustainability education gap, how business programs fail and succeed at integrating sustainability. And we haven't been around too long as a program. We've been in operation just about 2 years. And we're just about to bring in and initiate our third cohort of students in January. So we're still a new program. And this is one of the first articles in a serious business magazine that has actually featured a little bit of column space about us as a program specifically. And it's a non-trivial article as well. It reflects some serious journalism. And on the third page here, it says, Marlboro focuses on finance and investing. The Marlboro MBA is in managing for sustainability is the newest of the sustainability-based graduate programs. Like Presidio's and Bainbridge's programs, it combines distance learning with weekend face-to-face intensives at the college's Brattleboro, Vermont campus, etc. The program director, me, notes that Marlboro not only serves socially responsible businesses in New England, but also aims to train analysts for work with socially responsible investment funds and social venture capital firms based in the New England and New York area. Our admissions trend at the moment indicates that before too long, the largest concentration of our students will be from in and around New York City. And this is actually true if we look at the makeup of the cohort coming in January. Very interesting to me. And so all I can think to myself is, thank goodness we're having this event this evening in the nick of time, because finally with the folks assembled, we can actually begin to make the claim that, yes, we are focusing on finance and investing. No, but all joking aside, this was actually one of the thoughts that we had from the very beginning of this program, which is that, based where we are, at the bottom end of Vermont, we have the opportunity to really be part of the Vermont and sort of northern and western New England socially responsible business community. But because we're also relatively close to Boston and New York, we have the ability to attract students from those areas and be connected to the business events of the day, the business cultures, the fantastic faculty and guest speaker resources of those two metropolitan areas.
Okay, thank you, Ralph. As Ralph said, I'm Bill Bowie. I'm Executive Director of Sea Change Media, and I also teach the communications course here at the Marlboro Sustainability MBA. And as the communications professor, the students who I've taught know that we look at socially responsible investing in that course from the vantage point of shareholder engagement. And that is one of the topics that we'll be touching on tonight amongst many. And the finance end of things is also touched on in other parts of the curriculum. It was quite a while ago that conversation about this event started. And the idea was to move from an individual speaker mode to a panel mode, in part because the program is really based around dialogue and learning through dialogue. And so that's one of the ideas that we have for tonight, is that it would be in a dialogic fashion, presentation, but not just presentation from the panelists to the audience, but we've actually tried to configure it in such a way that this becomes a dialogue amongst the entire room. So I encourage everyone to listen in the early part with an ear towards questions, comments, and engagement in this conversation. I'm also going to mention that, as you can see, there's video and audio recording of this, so this event will be available in the future for those outside of this room. As well, two of the students in the program, Chris Lindgren and Tom Rasmussler, are writing a consensus paper afterwards. And so what their task is to capture the learnings that come out of this. And I want to end with that by underscoring the notion that we're here to learn and to generate new thinking. Okay, so we're going to do some looking at where things have been, but the title of this panel is Beyond SRI, the Future of Socially Responsible Investing. And there are folks here who are actually making that happen, and we all can contribute to that. And so I'm actually just going to introduce the moderator, Anders Ferguson, and he's going to introduce the panelists. Anders is with VERIS Wealth Partners. And he is based out of Shelburne Falls, so he's very near in this region. And Anders has had a very important hand in actually how this panel is organized. And I've really appreciated the input that Anders has brought to making this a really, I think, well-conceived way of presenting things. I also am familiar with some of Anders' other work besides the SRI and sustainability investing work that he does with VERIS. He had an important hand in the Spirit in Business Conference that happened earlier in this decade that I covered as a journalist writing for socialfunds.com that covers socially responsible investing. So, Anders, I'll hand it to you to introduce the panelists.
Thanks, Bill. Good evening, everyone. I hope that we can meet your high expectations and that our dialogue is scintillating. We're going to do our very best. I'm really delighted to be here. I have been an advisor of sort to the program, and I've had a chance to be involved in a few of the planning sessions, and it's really an important project that's going on here in Marlboro and birthing this MBA program in sustainability. And tonight we'll help and hope to help in adding some additional knowledge. I'd like to just take a moment and let you know who I'm here with. Three of the four panelists I have known for a while, or a very long while, and one I just got to meet, Casey Burton, and it was a pleasure. Casey, to my right, is the Deputy Director of the Interfaith Center on Corporate Responsibility, which is based in Manhattan, which helped establish the practice of shareholder activism. He previously served as Senior Associate of the Annie E. Casey Foundation and Public Affairs and Corporate Responsibility Manager at the Baltimore Sun. Annie E. Casey Foundation has played a very active role in this whole field. Thank you for traveling up. And to Casey's right is Cary Krosinsky. Cary is the North American Vice President of Trucost, which is an environmental research and investment firm, environmental investment research firm. And he's the co-editor with Nick Robbins of HSBC of the book Sustainable Investing, which is one of the go-to texts I would offer to you all for getting the latest trends and analysis of where we're going in the world of beyond SRI. He's also an adjunct professor at the Columbia University, where his students compile a sustainable investing portfolio. To Cary's right is one of the founders and grand old men of our industry, Peter Kinder. He's actually going to help open around the history, and you know, I'm trying to get him to, you know, not give you all the bloody details, but he certainly is a wonderful historian, and we share having grown up in Ohio together, which is not together, but in Ohio, which, you know, for the East Coast is not always, it's kind of a flyover zone often. So Peter is Senior Strategic Advisor to RiskMetrics Group, which was recently acquired which recently acquired KLD Research and Analytics, which is an SRI research investment firm that Peter co-founded in 1988. KLD launched the first broad-based research SRI research benchmark index in 1990, and it launched Socrates, the first computerized SRI database, in 1994. Peter ventured here from Boston, and thank you. And lastly, my old friend and colleague, Terry Mollner. Terry is the chair of Stakeholders Capital, an SRI firm advancing common good investing, and the president of Trusteeship Institute. He's also a founding board member of Calvert and a board member of Ben & Jerry's, where he helped to retain its social mission when acquired by Unilever. And Terry was one of my board members at Spirit in Business. And Terry, like me, didn't have to travel very far. We both live in Western Massachusetts. Oh, wow. So it's a great group of guys. Fortunately, we're not just white guys. And so let me give you a little framework of what we're going to try to do tonight. I think it's important, and we think it's important to give some framework. So we're going to spend 20 minutes or so with some opening remarks by each of the panelists, and we're going to try to give a foundation of knowledge in 4 areas. 1, some of the history and background. How did we get here? 2, the critical role of advocacy that's been part of the whole SRI and sustainable investing world. 3, the role of research, which has been instrumental in changing how financial analysts approach this field. And 4, and in the area that's beginning to break our way, actual performance in sustainable and socially responsible investing portfolios. So that's how we're going to open. And then we're going to go into a time where we're going to see how dialogic we can really be amongst ourselves. And somewhere in there, I'm going to open this up, and we're going to ask for your questions to come into this circle also. And then we'll also come do some more back and forth, and then we'll wrap up. So hopefully that sounds like a good plan to everybody. I promise we'll be done not later than 7:30. Although it's very clear in just doing the planning for this that the knowledge and wisdom that's here with me tonight could really be an amazing day-long class. We've got a lot of strength here. So before I kind of hand this over to my colleagues, I just want to give a little additional framework and terminology. One, we're going to be talking tonight about sustainable and socially responsible investing. Oftentimes there are some core concepts that are linked into that. So one of them that Casey's going to really talk about tonight is the role of shareholder engagement, advocacy, proxy voting. It's considered one of the legs of this whole movement. It actually dates back a lot longer than any of us have been around, the role of advocacy in changing how investing is done. Another component that we're going to talk about is the actual way that SRI investing is done, and that's been the role of using screening, environmental, social governance screening, actually the development of all that research, which Peter in particular has played an instrumental role in, and we're going to talk about screening and research. Another core concept that has, as our field and our industry has grown and changed, we're now seeing more and more talk of sustainable investing. For instance, Calvert now has redefined SRI to sustainable, responsible investing. So we're now seeing that word more and more, and the implication being that the investment process is an integrated process which takes sustainability factors and integrates them fully at the analytical level with core financial analysis. So it's not a kind of two-step process of financial analysis with research overlaid it. And then lastly, the other leg that has traditionally been acknowledged in this world has been community investing. It's a word that's now often being used to describe this is also impact investing. But this is investing at the local or global level, but non-publicly traded securities that are in community loan funds, microfinance, and other types of vehicles, getting work done in all kinds of intractable social and environmental issues at the local level. So that's a bit of framework. And without further ado, I'd like to, we're going to start with 5 to 10 minutes of the history and background, and Terry's going to start and Peter's going to augment it. Terry.
Voila. Well, hello, everybody. Ooh, have I got the right distance here? Is that right? Okay. I'm going to begin by asking a question. And I want you to raise your hand if you agree with this statement. How many people in this room think the universe is one indivisible whole? Raise your hand. Okay. Interesting. All right. I asked that question at John Mackey, the founder of Whole Foods conference in Austin, Texas, which was 200 libertarian business owners. Libertarians are people who, care about individual freedom above all else. Nearly every hand in the room went up. I asked that question at the Social Investment Forum. Some of us are in this room. Social Investment Network. Nearly every hand in the room went up. What I'm trying to point out is that I think the essence of the beginning of SRI was an instinct that we are maturing as a species. And we're moving into recognizing the unity of nature, that we're all in this together. And that was really the inspiration of how those of us who began this in the 1970s were coming from. We didn't feel we could quite articulate it that way, but I think we had the instinct for it. So I'm going to now tell you a little bit of the history so that you'll know what it is. In 1975 or so, a man named Bob Swan and I, and then Chuck Mathai joined us. Some of you may know those names. And we created the Institute for Community Economics in Boston, Cambridge. And we put out a one sheet of paper. And the one sheet of paper said, hey, if you want to help us make loans to help low-income housing, loan us some money, and we'll pay you a 6% interest rate. And just send it to us. It was one sheet of paper. No securities rules, nothing. We didn't pay, we just did it. And we set up a separate checking account, and people started to send us money. And we began to do community land trust loans and low-income housing loans with the money. We thought we were probably illegal. We were basically legal, but we didn't know it. So we were quietly doing this in New England, all right? This was the beginning, one of the beginnings of the community, what we now call community development financial institutions, all right? That grew and grew and grew, and then after I went off to Calvert and Bob went off to E.F. Schumacher Society, Chuck took it and grew it very strongly. But there was a group in San Francisco called the Vanguard Group, which started to do it as well. Chuck got a lawyer to take a look, finally, years later, and we discovered that tax-exempt organizations are exempt from securities laws, and that we were able to do it. But we thought we weren't legal for the first couple of years that we were all doing this. But today, there's a definition in the IRS has a definition for the word charitable under tax exemption. It's one sentence, And one of the phrases in that sentence is reducing neighborhood tensions. All community development organizations out of tax-exempt organizations are based upon that one phrase in the definition of charitable. And so there's hundreds and hundreds of nonprofit organizations all over the country, and Bill Clinton ended up creating a whole government agency to help provide capital for this group, okay? Then in the latter part of the 1970s, Bob and I invited 15 to 20 leaders, socially responsible kind of leaders of social nonprofit groups and for-profit groups. Robert Zevin was one of the people in that group. You remember Robert? And what we did over 18 months is that we had people help us write what became, in essence, and arguably the first set of social screens. And every month we'd get together and people would give a whole bunch of ideas. I'd write them all down, then I'd go home and I'd type it all up, and then I'd mail it in the mail to everybody, and then we'd all come back the next month and we'd look at it again and change it, and I'd go home and rewrite it again. I did this every month for 18 months. At the end of the 18 months, we had this set of social screens for investment, and we were going to get money from foundations and set up little organizations and nonprofits and make loans to what is basically community investment today. One of the guys I got to come to be a part of that group was Wayne Silby. And Wayne Silby was the person who had started the Calvert Group, what became known as the Calvert Group, which was mainly money market funds. And that's a very interesting story in itself, which you would enjoy hearing someday. But one day, Wayne flew up to help me think this through, because I was setting up 3 different kinds of nonprofit organizations, and I had some lawyers in Boston helping me out. We took a walk in a park after lunch. And I said to Wayne, Wayne, a professor I had in college, Ken Blanchard, he later became famous. He wrote the book 1 Minute Manager. But when he was in college, he used to say to me, if you want to teach somebody something, he said, try to sell them something. They always pay attention when they're deciding whether or not to buy something. What that was. So I said that to Wayne. Wayne stopped in the path. He turned and looked at me and he said, well, if that's the case, we should set it up as a mutual fund so that we can offer it as $1,000 to anybody, so then they'll learn about socially responsible investing. Our eyes met. And it's one of those moments. You know those moments? We had that look in each other's eyes like, oh my God, that's something we can do. That's something our generation can do for humanity, and we can do that. That was the beginning of the Calvert Mutual Funds. There's a whole lot of other stories of what happened, but 6 months later, Wayne calls me up on the phone and says, let's do it inside my company. And so we created the Calvert Social Investment Funds inside the Calvert, what was only money market funds at that point, and we created the first stock and bond funds inside the Calvert Group. That was 1982, so we launched it in October of 1982. If you all can remember, the stock market took off in 1982. It had been in recession and dormant all during the 70s, and then it took off in 1982. Money was flooding out of the money market funds and into the stock market. Wayne was from Iowa, and his buddy who started the company, John, they didn't have any money, and so they ended up having to sell the company. And so they sold the company to a big insurance company, and now we're owned by a large insurance company. But I'll tell you this, that the board of mutual funds have the final say. We hire a management company to manage the fund for us. So a board of a mutual fund is a corporation without any employees. We just signed a legal contract with another company, and there's a number of interlocking corporations in the mutual fund industry. So the Calvert Social Investment Mutual Fund Board still has ultimate control over the company, even though the management company runs the fund for us. We could give 90 days notice and we could leave at any time, and you don't ever do that in the mutual fund industry unless there's a really big problem, and there hasn't been a big problem. So that's why the board that we put together in the beginning is still able to guide the Calvert Social Investment Mutual Funds. And so that's then what happened right after 1982, working assets came into existence. And then later in the decade, Amy Domini's fund, the Domini Index Fund that you guys created, came into existence in 1990 or 91, right? And so the whole industry started. But here's another important thing for, I think, you to know as business students. Every month from 1983 on, there were 10 to 20 articles about this new phenomenon called social responsible investment in magazines all over the country. I would get on the United Airlines magazine, there'd be an article about it. Because there were 2 or 3 funds in existence by that time. There was Pax World, which was the first one, an anti-Vietnam War kind of fund. And so it wasn't a puff piece about one company, it was 2 or 3 companies You know, it was in fact, it was Pox World, it was Calvert, and it was Working Assets. We didn't have money for advertising. And so the free press told the story because it was an interesting story to be able to put ads around it. That happened for 10 years before the first really negative article about socially responsible investing emerged. 10 to 20 articles every month. Every time I'd go to a board meeting, I'd get a packet this thick of all the articles. So the next important thing I think to say, and then I'm going to pass it on to Peter, is that we thought, I mean, when Wayne went to his management group and said, listen, I want to start this new fund called Social Responsible Investment, the whole management said, well, get laughed off of Wall Street. You can't do this. And Wayne said, well, I'm the owner of the company with John, and we're going to do it. And so we had to hire a woman friend of ours to run the thing out of a back office. And we thought if we got to $5 million the first couple of years, you know, we'd be happy. We needed to get to $13 million to be break even. So, you know, the company was just going to fund it until it happened. South Africa took off. 1983 was when the students started demonstrating on college campuses against apartheid in South Africa, and they began to go to their board of directors and insist they change their investment. The only socially responsible investment was Calvert Group. And so we had $30 million in the fund within the first year or two, which turned us into being. Then the company got sold in 1983, and it was the stock and bond funds in the social that really saved the company because we were bringing money in because the stock market was taking off and people were running into us because of South Africa and because of getting into stocks. And so that's what saved it when all the money was flooding out of the money market funds. And so Calvert has grown like crazy since then. Now we have $15 billion under management, and the social responsible mutual funds, of which we now have 17, and a whole panoply of the different kind of funds. And you know, we have $5 to $6 billion under management. And we're the largest family of social responsible mutual funds. But it all started with two guys walking in a park and looking each other in the eyes and going, oh my God, we could do that.